You're going to see it all.
He left the others far behind. Here's the wire. Twilight Ridge has won it. Wayne Lucas sweeps 1-2. Life's magic. She's winning this one, pulling away from the field, and has left the field behind in the wake of a devastating performance. Capote is full out to hold the lead. He's there by 2. Qualified, trying to catch him from the outside. It is still Capote. Qualified with one final surge. No, Capote has won it. Lady Secret in front by 4. Friend Valentine, outstandingly classy Kathy, and here is a brilliant champion. Success Express trying to hold on for another 100 yards, and yes, he has done it. Randy Romero putting the whip to Sakawista, trying to hold on with her. Clever girl can't get to her. They're running out of ground, and it's going to be Sakawista wire to wire. Open Mind playing on the outside. Darby Shuffle. Open Mind now emerging with the lead. Darby Shuffle. Open Mind wins it going away. Is it true? Trying to hold on. Easy goer. Can't get to him. Right there. Gulch emerging with the lead. Play the king. It's Gulch. Play the king. Here's the wire. And Gulch has won it. Steinlen's in tight. He's looking for racing room toward the inside. Sabona's coming hard. Zilzal unleashing a furious one on the outside. Steinlen, a daring move on the hedge. Gets the lead. Sabona, one last lunge. Steinlen! Don't count Flanders out yet. Captain goes to her. Flanders on the inside. On the outside, Serena Song giving their all as they come down to the line. A spellbinding stretch run. Flanders, Serena Song. Flanders, Timber Country takes off like a shot in the final furlong, and he will go on to be a champion. Boston Harbor digs down deep, and yes, he would not be denied a championship. Catron with unwavering determination turns back Cherokee. Suicide too late. Catron wins. Kathy clawing his way to the lead. Kathy throws a missile. Kathy from front. Kathy coming down to the line, and Kathy has won it. They're coming down to the finish, and it is going to be Spain to win it. 50-1 on the wire. Orientate is surging here beneath Jerry Bailey. Here's the wire. Orientate wins in the final strides. Here's the wire, and Folklore wins.
Hightail the maiden sneaking through on the inside. Merritt Man is backing back a thriller. Hightail, Merritt Man. I believe Hightail has shocked them all.
Charge Branding is still there. Wonder Gal, Top Decile, Feathered, all trying to get her with the net. But Take Charge Brandy has gone all the way. She's 60-1.
Wow. So welcome to the Future Stars Forecast. Our amazing team that handles social media, headed up by our director, Haley Amos, put that montage together, of course, featuring the coach, D. Wayne Lucas, who passed away over the weekend. And I will admit, I was actually hesitant to even do a show this week. I'm just going to speak from the heart right now. I thought about writing something up, sound real professional, but I'm just going to speak from the heart. There would have been, it would have looked like a gaping miss of, I would have been remiss not to say anything, acknowledge his passing if I didn't do something. But at the same time, I don't want the responsibility of saying something and it not being profound enough, right? So I'll just say it this way. I'm in my 40s, okay? And so I grew up on a thoroughbred horse farm. And we were a big fish in a small pond up in Michigan, but we weren't anywhere close to the glitz of what's happening in Kentucky or in California. But the first horse, superstar horse that I remember watching live, not in person, but live on TV, was a daughter of my all-time favorite horse, Secretariat. And of course, I'm talking about the Iron Lady, Lady's Secret. And she just was my heart horse as a little girl, right? And if you love a horse, you had to love the trainer, and he was my first hero in this sport. I can still remember what he looked like in my child's eyes. This really confident man in his suit and tie and the sunglasses, and you knew that behind those sunglasses there was a gleam in his eye to match that $1 million smile. It's really incredible when I think back. I'm sorry. It's really incredible when I think back, because never as that little girl did I think that I'd ever have the opportunity to speak with him, let alone have the honor of interviewing him and introducing him to my own child. And that that's going to be one of those memories that I'm always going to cherish. And there are no words to really put into context what D. Wayne Lukas has meant to this sport, not just with the superstars that ran on track for him, but those who came out of his shed row. I mean, we just saw this weekend alone, right? Todd Pletcher win the Stephen Foster with Mind Frame, and Dallas Stewart, he took the Hanshin Cup with We'll Take It. And it's really incredible to just look back on this career. Again, we just went over 20 Breeders' Cup victories. He had 15 Triple Crown wins. I think he's the only trainer to ever win the Triple Crown series in the same year with 3 different horses. He just is a legend, and we are so thankful. When I say we, I hope I can speak for the collective we of you all out there. We are so thankful that we got to witness his what can you call it? His artistry, right? The way he can manage things, the way he put things together. He's an inspiration, and he will continue to be so for generations to come. So again, another thank you to the team, Haley, for putting that montage together. It's so great, brings tears to my eye. It lets me see, as a child again, seeing some of those old horses. And after talking about the past, let's go ahead now and talk about the future. This is the Future Stars forecast, and we saw a 2-year-old debut on Sunday that, I mean, hey, anybody who witnessed this horse run had to be super impressed. I am, of course, talking about Dazzle Dioro, and I have his trainer with me, Tom Amoss. I'm gonna bring you in. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Ren. Thank you for having me on.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. As I was saying in that intro, I almost didn't do the show this week because I knew, as I said, if I didn't talk about the coach's passing, it would look disrespectful. And at the same time, I didn't want the responsibility of having to say anything about it, because I just feel like I couldn't do it justice. But do you have any indelible memories that you have of the coach that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
I think everyone does. He had an impact on everyone, either directly or indirectly. But in 1976, I was 15 years old enough to drive, and I took a job out at the fairgrounds during Christmas break from high school for Jack Vanberg. And I told Vanberg that I had an aspiration to train horses. And in his gruff voice, he told me, he said, "Son, it's a country boy's game." And back then it was. You grew up with horses, you understood. I was a total city boy in New Orleans when I had that first job. But it was Wayne just a few years later, and I happened to be in California in the summer, I think it was 78, when he won the Hollywood Starlet with Terra Lingua, which was one of his first really, really big wins. And I was there at Hollywood Park when that happened. And I was watching, without realizing it, the passing of the torch. It was no longer a country boys game. It was a business. And Wayne set the standard. He set the model. And it's the same model that all of us as trainers follow to some extent today. So yeah, I mean, he was one of a kind, and certainly used the word legend. And that's probably an overused term in life, but not here. He was a legend.
Oh, for sure. I get teared up because it immediately, just thinking of him connects me with my childhood. As I said, the first horse I can remember loving that I got to see race live was Lady Secret. And the second one was Ali Sheba, who Jack Vanberg. So these horses and the connections to them, they build these memories within us. And when somebody like Wayne passes, it feels like there's just something that's tugged out of you and forward, and you're immediately reconnected with that innocence.
Oh yeah, for sure. I failed to mention that about 10 years later, when I was an assistant trainer in New York, I worked with Terralingua's baby, a very, very talented filly named Chapel of Dreams, who was by Northern Dancer. That would have been 87.
God.
So, it's a small world. Yeah, Wayne was always there to give advice and was a super kind guy. And he loved to teach, as is shown by so many of those guys that went on to do well underneath his tutelage.
Oh, for sure. And even those who didn't, I read the post that Bob Baffert put out, and it was so beautiful. I don't know if you had an opportunity to read it, but if anybody out there wants to see what I'm talking about, it's on Bob's X account, and it was just from the heart. What draws us all to racing in the first place, of course, is the horses. What was it specifically for you?
I became acquainted with it. No one in my family had anything to do with horse racing, but I became acquainted with it in about the 7th or 8th grade, and I loved the handicapping angle of it. I loved looking at the racing form like it was a puzzle, and trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And then the beauty of it was when that puzzle went the way you thought it would, and not I don't just mean the horse that you liked win, but the race setup, everything that goes into that. So look, by the time I was in 9th grade, I was fluent in reading the form. I loved it. And then I got taken to the backside by an owner and his family. That family has been very involved in racing, and their son, who was one of my close friends, my best friend, Al Stahl, was the one that introduced me to the backside of the racetrack.
Oh,
Al was
wow.
a college trainer. And when I saw the backside of the racetrack, it was, I've compared it a few times to this. It was literally like going to see your favorite play 4 or 5 times and then getting to go backstage and seeing how it all works to make that play present itself on stage. And for me, the inner workings of the stable on the backside and the care for the horse and everything that went into a race, which is a lot more than just sticking him in the starting gate and the fast one wins, I fell in love with that. And I knew even back then that my future was in horse racing, and I'd wanted to be a trainer one day.
Oh my gosh. No, there's so much that goes into it that people don't even think about when they're just watching the race, right? Before whatever the distance is. And by the way, I need to do a mental check. I actually said 3 different horses for the Triple Crown for him. Actually, it was Thunder Gulch winning I got to correct myself. I'm one of those people. The Kentucky Derby, then Timber Country in the Preakness, and then Thunder Gulch in the Belmont Stakes, 95. But yeah, going back to what it takes to be a trainer, we look at it, when we're just watching the races, and they go in the gate, and whether it's a sprint and we're talking about a minute and change, or a route talking about 2 and change, at the end of the day, people need to understand that there's been years backing all of this up, from the mating to getting the horse, with its early paces, to getting to the trainer, to then making that start. What do you think is the most underrated aspect that goes into training that people just don't take into consideration?
I think it's individualizing the program for the horse. I think it's getting to know the horse and getting to know the likes and dislikes of that horse. They're just like people. These are elite athletes. Some enjoy their job. Some don't really like, having to practice all the time. And it's just anything that goes into putting that horse in the gate and making him run his best. Could be claustrophobic around other horses and doesn't like being in tight. It could be anything. But when you see it come together as a trainer, as it did on Sunday with Dazzle Dioro, it's a great feeling inside. Look, he's a talented horse, and he'd be talented in anybody's hands. But watching it come together and watching you working with this animal, and together you guys getting to the winner's circle, that's a very satisfying feeling for a trainer. I think I speak for everybody when I say that.
Well, people were anticipating this boy's debut. He'd been working incredibly. Let's talk about how he first got to your barn. He was purchased as a yearling in Keeneland, September, for $250,000. Lauren Carlisle signing the ticket. I believe you've worked before together.
Yeah, Lauren is an agent, and we work together. I have a few clients that that rightfully so entrust their investment with Lauren. And so, this particular horse, which was bought at the Keeneland yearling sale, I did not really have anything to do with him other than Lauren presenting the horse to me and saying, "Hey, this is a horse that we want to purchase, but it needs to have your stamp of approval on it." And I looked at the horse, and I see you showing a picture of him right now. He's a gorgeous horse. I mean, you got to love those angles. Strong
Yes.
shoulder, and a great rear end, what we call an engine. He's a very much a prototypical route looking horse. He's got scope even as a yearling, but he continues to carry it now. And so even though he's very fast, I think a lot of that has to do with his overall athleticism. But going a distance is something that certainly I myself look forward to working with Dazzle Diora with, and I think he'll be successful doing it.
Well, as you see, son of Bolt Doro out of Sunny Sammy, and she a daughter of First Defense. Let me go ahead and stop the screen here. Obviously, Bolt Dioro was super talented himself, and he's off to a good start. Not start. I mean, he's had a few crops now, but getting the footing here for his progeny. Son of Medallion Dioro, it's a really strong line too. How was he when he got to the barn for you initially?
Well, so there's a process, right? The horse was bought back in September of his yearling year. He went off to Highlander Training Center, which is outside of Dallas, where we break the vast majority of our horses. And he began the breaking process there. I went and visited him. At that point, he was just learning how to put a saddle on. And then I went and visited a second time, which was now into 2025, his 2-year-old year. And the group down there, first of all, I've got to say they do a great job with all the horses. But he was well mannered, and he showed a terrific stride on the racetrack. So there were a lot of things to like about him even before he made it to the racetrack. But he came to the racetrack in April, and he never had a hiccup. He got himself ready, and he got himself ready quickly. And as you said, his workouts showed he had real talent. I mean, he was the kind of horse that when he was at Keeneland, which he was there to begin with, that's where he started preparing. He would catch people's eye when he was working out, to the point where, etiquette is never ask a trainer the name of a horse that works. But I was getting a lot of that. Who was that horse that just worked?
Oh, well, there was a great quote from you because, of course, off this performance, he got the Rising Star designation from the TDN. And so I read the article, and you spoke with Lynn Whiting, who trained Little ET. Can you tell us what you said there?
Sure. I came to Churchill Downs in the early 90s. I was a dominant trainer at the fairgrounds in Louisiana at the time, and I wanted to expand and hopefully try to make it. So I came in the early 90s with a very small group to Churchill Downs. We were fortunate, and we had some success, and I was able to make it, a permanent part of what I did. But when I first got there in the 90s, Lynn Whiting, who was a bit of a mentor to me and also a good friend, he pulled me aside. He said, "Let me give you a few tricks of the trade here at Churchill, kind of some inside knowledge." He said, "If you ever have one work from the gate and he works faster than a minute from the starting gate, you've got a runner." And I remember putting the watch on Dazzle Dioro and his gate work at Churchill Downs. And I hit the watch after the 5/8 work. I knew I caught him just right. And it said 59 2/5 of a second. And Lynn's words came back to me. And they came back to me again after his race. Lynn was a great trainer. He knew his stuff.
I mean, this horse. Well, I'll show the replay here, and then I'll give a few more details to put this performance in context for those who might have missed it. Let's see here. I'm going to share the screen, and then we've got the replay here. Go ahead and hit the play button.
They're off. Very quiet, breaks in stride. Opulent with good speed too, but Dazzle Duro is quick. And Dazzle Duro is racing to the lead, and he opens up by 2.5 in the first furlong, leaving Opulent back in second. Very Quiet's racing third. Double checked outside fourth. Blackout Time is now fifth. I did. Sixth, Exonerate in seventh by 5. Bedeviled is eighth, Quality Spirits in ninth, Seal Base in 10th, and King of Heat is the trailer. Strung out field, Dazzle Doro whips onto the far turn, fires off a quarter in 21-1, leads down to 2 though. Alpeland in pursuit second. Blackout Time, steady progress down inside, up into second now. They're closing in on Dazzle Duro, who hits the quarter pole with a confident ride. Dazzle Duro's off the turn. Blackout Time in tight down toward the rail, forced to come off cover, angles outside and is targeting Dazzle Duro. Dazzle Duro, though, with something left, is set down now, but the lead is 3. Blackout Time is trying, but Dazzle Duro dazzling today. A sharp 2-year-old there. Dazzle Doro, start to finish. Blackout Time second by.
I mean, that was special.
Yeah, he ran a really nice race. I watched it again. I was thinking about what I was doing during the race. So when they broke from the gate and he cleared, I turned to the owner, Bob Delaney, and I said, "We've got no excuse." I told him before the race, look, hopefully we break well. Oftentimes these debut 2-year-olds forget their lessons. And, if we break well, at least we know it'll be a fair fight because it was a field that had some horses with some great credentials coming in. He cleared the group. I told Bob, I said, "We've got no excuse from here." When they turned for home, they kind of came to him. It was either going to be showtime or it was going to be no time. And when you can see a horse quicken with the naked eye, that's a nice horse. And with Dazzle Dioro, if you pay close attention, after he turns for home, you can see Jose Ortiz ask Dazzle, and you can see him noticeably quicken with the naked eye. That's a sign of a good horse. So, they cross the wire, and the first thing going through my head is, you know, um, you know, what do I do to keep this horse going in the right direction? What do I do to keep him on course? Look, it's June of his 2-year-old year. The big races of his 3-year-old career are light years away, and you'll see many more just like him, in my opinion, that break their main in a fast time and dominate a good group as a 2-year-old. But the goal here, of course, is to make this horse last and to make him make the big 3-year-old races next year. And there's some things that as a trainer you're going to be doing. So number one, what's his mental attitude, which is so important. And he is a really laid back guy. He's got a great mind. What's his mental attitude going to be like when he returns to the racetrack? Is he going to be a horse that understands what he just did and actually train forwardly? Is he going to be edgy? Is the experience going to be a little bit too much for him? And that's a fine line between edgy and sharp and ready to go. So you're going to pay a lot of attention to him from the mental aspect of training, and certainly we know he's fast, but we don't need him to be fast every time he goes out and does something. So we want to be careful that we don't do too much with him at this early age.
That's interesting that you say that, because we often talk about how a horse might come back into a race after they've lost or something's happened where maybe they've gotten bumped, roughed up, but not that they might be a little edgy coming out, having won and won what appears to be in easy fashion.
Yeah, I think the aspect of a race for a horse that's never run before has a lot of dimensions that are new to that horse, and he's got to be able to handle it mentally. Whether it's the paddock saddling with a bunch of other horses, listening to some of those other horses holler and scream out of nervousness. We get that a lot with first-time starters. He didn't do any of that. Warming up on the racetrack with a group of horses, going in the starting gate with more than just one other horse or 2 other horses. In this case, I think the field was 10 horses. You cannot simulate that in practice. So all these things are new for a horse. He can look great in practice, just like a golfer can look great on the driving range. But when they get on the first tee, they don't need to hook it or shank it. They need to hit it straight down the middle, and that's what he did.
Well, I love what you said, straight down the middle too, because I was thinking also for a young horse, I mean, it can be hard enough for an older horse to get out there on the lead on that Churchill stretch, which is 1,234 feet, and maybe get a little lost out there. He just kept to task.
Yeah, he did. And I think Jose's comments after the race were important. He said, "This horse has a great mind. I really feel like I could have done anything I wanted with him, and I think it bodes well for his future. And that's what you want to hear. Everybody that's involved with the horse, whether it's the groom, the exercise rider, the hot walker, in this case Jose, who not only worked him before the race but was on him for the race. Look, as a trainer, you've got to be absorbing all that knowledge from those people. And if you find anything that is a clue to get in your horse's head and work with him more successfully, that's what you want to do. Look, the comment I that really makes my hair stand is, "Oh, if only they could speak." You hear that a lot about racehorses, and the truth is, they speak to us every day. They don't speak English; they speak horse. And the best trainers, the like D. Wayne Lucas. Lucas is about as fluent in the language of the horse as you can be, but good trainers are also fluent in the language as well.
Oh, well, just to again put that performance in context. Just 2 races later was the Bashford Manor, and the winner there, who'd already raced twice before, Romeo, he stopped the clock in a stakes record time of 108 and 61 100ths. Your boy on debut, first race ever, went 108 and 65 100ths. I mean, dear goodness.
Yeah, look, that's certainly a credit to the horse that won the Bashford Manor. He did it in stakes record time, and to our horse as well. So, Churchill Downs writes 1/6/8 of a mile maiden race for 2-year-olds. It's always the last day of the meet. Everything before then is the distances have been less. So when I say 6/8, I'm talking about 6 furlongs. So you get that race once a year, and it's usually a stacked race. I felt it was going into this year's race. I'd heard quite a bit about Kenny's horse that ran a really good second, and you can see the separation between second and third. It was quite a ways back to third after that, despite some really, really good horses, and I'm sure they're going to show themselves later in life. I'm not looking forward to seeing a horse like Romeo, but I'm not afraid of him either.
No, that again was such an impressive debut. And to be part also of this big weekend that Jose Ortiz himself had, I think it makes it a little cherry on top.
He's been doing it all year.
Yeah.
He came out of the fairgrounds and absolutely dominated. He was Joe Sharp's go-to rider at both meets, and it's no coincidence that Joe won the training title in New Orleans and then won it again at Churchill. That has a lot to do with, when a trainer wins a title, it has a lot to do with the people that they work with. And I'm sure Joe said, but I didn't hear that he gave a lot of credit to Jose, as he should have.
Well, Jose was aboard Serengeti Empress for the Oaks too, so
He was. He
Yeah.
was. He got a good memory.
oh,
He
how
rode
could I forget?
Serengeti Empress. And if you watch that race, when he crossed the wire in front, he took his hand and he pointed to his head like this. And what he was telling the world was that he won the race by going to the lead, slowing it down. He rode a jockey's race. He rode a thinking man's race, and he really outthought everyone that day. And I'm forever grateful to him for that. That was my biggest win of my career and a signature moment for the Amos Racing Stable.
You got to enjoy it with your parents.
I've been dragging my parents all over the country to hopefully win a big race, and it never happened. Not one like that. And by that time, they were pretty old. They were in their 90s, so they were watching it on TV. But I knew they were watching, and both my children, Ashley and Haley, were there along with my wife Colleen. So we all got to experience the race together. But I must have had 1,000 thoughts go through my head when she crossed the wire in front. Thought a lot about the people that had taught me along the way and given me their knowledge, unselfishly, my ex-bosses. I thought a lot about my mom and dad. It's to me, it's not a coincidence. My mom died later that year after that happened, and my father died the following spring. So, I'd always ask God. I never asked him for a win, but I did say to him often at night when I'd say my prayers, I'd say, listen, if there's a signature win out there for me, could you make it happen before my parents pass away? And he gave it to me that final year. And I feel really blessed and fortunate to have him give me that gift.
That's beautiful. And on a funny note, I had to cue this up because Serengeti Empress was one of our featured 2-year-olds when we got the forecast off and running and we were doing these feature packages. So it was 2018 and I was at the barn, and this is actually one of the funniest moments I've ever had. interviewing somebody with the horse there.
Really attractive, and that gives her a lot of speed.
We watch
But
what she
when you
does
look at
here.
her pedigree, particularly when you look at her father, you see a lot of distance in the pedigree.
Yeah.
So she's got that really dynamic duo of speed and the ability to carry the distance of ground.
Which is what you're going to want in the mile and the 16th juvenile fillies. Now, she won her last start, the Pocahontas, at Churchill Downs by a whopping 19 and a half lengths. Prior to that, the Ellis Park debutante by 13 and a half. Were you surprised by these giant open length scores?
I like how I just kept rolling with it.
A real gentleman would have gotten her off of you a little bit earlier than that. So my apologies.
No,
But I can tell you, the only thing she's doing is looking for peppermints.
I
That
know.
was her
She's so
favorite
sweet.
thing.
She
She
was
loved
so
peppermints.
sweet. I know she's mommy now. I think she's got. I think Cox has her baby Invictus.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, she. Oh my gosh, so brilliant. I mean, I know she didn't get that Breeders' Cup win, but she ran in 3 different divisions. She got in the money in 2 of them, the Distaff and the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint.
Yeah, if the Oaks was her most brilliant race, then I would say her Grade 1 stakes win going 7/8 at Saratoga
Yeah.
was really her, cherry on top to show she was for real. That was during COVID, and so there weren't any people at the track at Saratoga that year. So it was, in a sense, a bit disappointing that no one could see how brilliant she was that day unless they watched it on TV. Because Saratoga is one of those places where the crowd appreciates, greatness. And she didn't break well. She had to rush up into there, and she did. And then
The
she took
ballerina,
on,
right? Yeah.
yes, and she
Yeah.
took on Latruska, who ended up being a really good horse after that. And she battled Latruska into the ground, that's how she did it. She put him away early. And, I thought to myself, midway down the stretch, man, she ran a brilliant race, but here comes, I can't remember who it was who had, saved all their energy and was making a run at her. And I said, she's not going to win. No one will understand just how good this race was. And she caught that horse out of the corner of her eye and she kept on going. I was really proud of her that day.
Oh gosh, she obviously remained a favorite after that interaction that I had. So when she'd run, I'd be screaming for her, and she's just. I remember just you talking about her shoulder and her speed being her weapon, and she definitely employed it. And what a cool mare! And the fact that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, was it $70,000 you got her for?
Yes. Now I did buy her,
Easy,
and I
man.
remember seeing her at the barn, and her owner Joel Politi, Dr. Politi is a very good horseman in his own right. He grew up with horses, and he came in town the next day. She wasn't selling quite yet, but she was on the grounds at Keeneland, and I brought him over to the barn. I prepped him, and I was like, "Hey, man, I really like this horse." And he looked at her, didn't say a lot because you don't want to say too much in front of anybody. And we walked off. He goes, "Man, I like her too. What are we gonna have to pay to get her?" I said, "Maybe $100,000," because she didn't really have a wow pedigree it wasn't fashionable, I guess is what I should say. And he said, "Let's go for it." And we only paid 70 for her. And just like Dazzle Dioro, she did break her maiden first time out as well. So she showed talent from the start.
That's awesome. Made over $2 million ultimately.
Yeah.
So talk about
All-time favorite
ROI.
horse. My all-time favorite horse.
Oh, do you get out to go see her out here?
I've seen her twice at the farm, but when she left to become a mama, it took me a while before I was willing to go out there and see her. I just, yeah, it was hard for me to do because I've been with her every day, and she was always in the first stall next to the office, whether we were in New Orleans or whether we were at Churchill Downs. So she was the first horse I'd see when I came in, the last horse I see when I leave. It was hard to let her go. That's that's just one of those things, unfortunately.
No, it definitely is. But you still do have all these relationships of the, humankind sticking with you. What obviously it's because you're awesome, but what else do you also account for the fact that you do have these long relationships with your clients? Maggie Moss comes to mind.
I think it's communication. I truly do. I consider those people my friends. Maggie, Joel, certainly, Bob Delaney that owns Dazzle Dioro. They're all longtime clients, 20 years plus, each of them. And I think you have to be a good communicator. You have to be willing to, talk talk about the good and the bad when you're training horses. No one likes giving bad news, but it's part of it. And with that comes honesty. And I think all those things add up to a relationship that you can really forge with somebody. It also helps a great deal if the person you're working with really understands racing. And from that, I mean the ups and downs, the disappointments, which there are many, and the appreciation of any successes you have. If you can, as an owner, do those things and you enjoy racing and you want to learn, well, then, you can have a great relationship with a trainer like me. And there are many just like me that do the same things.
Do you have a special affinity for the fairgrounds, with obviously coming from New Orleans?
Of course, I
That
grew up at the
connection?
fairgrounds.
Yeah.
When it burned to the ground in the '90s, I was at dinner in New Orleans. We had raced that day, and the chef came out the back. He was a racing guy, and he whispered in my ear, "There's a small fire at the fairgrounds in the jocks room." And then he came back out a half an hour later. He said, "Hey man, this thing looks bad." And I drove to the track to my barn, which was on the backside, and I watched it burn, and that was a very emotional moment for me.
Yeah.
Um, and look, nobody knew what the future was after that. And I had a barn of 50 horses, and owners are calling. I didn't have the right answers for what was going to happen next. And a lot of them were rightfully making plans with their investments to go elsewhere. And not just me, but every other trainer there. And the owner of the fairgrounds at the time was Brian Krantz. And Brian had a meeting 2 days after the fire with the horsemen. He said, "We will be up and running in 3 weeks." And he had purchased some circus tents from out in Europe, and we were up and running in 3 weeks. Every trainer was able to pass that message on to their owners,
Oh,
and
wow.
every horse stayed put. And Brian deserves a lot of credit for that. The fairgrounds is so close to my heart that I was ready to criticize if I thought something wasn't right at the fairgrounds, and Brian certainly took the brunt of that at times. But that moment was a big moment, and Brian deserves a lot of credit for keeping us all calm and keeping the owners in the stalls.
That's amazing. I don't know if I ever heard that story
Oh
before.
yeah, fact.
Wow. So, I mean, this past a couple of weeks must have been a bit stressful regarding the fairgrounds and the potential
Yeah,
closing.
a totally different set of circumstances,
Right.
and and one that I'm pleased to see the outcome
Yeah.
go the right way. And it would have been really difficult if racing hadn't returned to New Orleans this winter. I mean, look,
Absolutely.
it would have been difficult simply from the standpoint of that's my place. That's
Yeah.
that's my home field.
No, it's hard enough. Arlington and Hollywood Park and a lot of these tracks that we build memories. I grew up going to DRC, and I can still remember some of the greats who happened to pass through town. We used to have the Michigan Mile and 1/8, and so
Yeah, so we got a lot of horses back in the early days, back in the '70s and '80s from DRC, and a lot of
really,
trainers as well would come in, and riders too. So they were a big part of the fairgrounds history.
oh yeah, I just look at it, and the other thing is all these different tracks. I wish we could do more also for the public. All these tracks have such different flavor to them, right? Saratoga is so much different from pick any other track you want in the country. They all have their unique je ne sais quoi. I remember going to Keeneland as a little girl with my parents, and to me, when you're just a kid, it looked like a castle in the middle of a field.
Yeah, Keeneland is it's the Augusta of our racetracks, in my opinion. Saratoga is, I think, the best quality horse racing for an entire meet that you're going to find anywhere in the country, and it runs opposite of Del Mar, which is a great meet.
Mhm.
But they really, as you say, they take on totally different characteristics. Those two racetracks.
Oh yeah, even from a completely just girly, a perspective now, got to dress differently for each as well. They have their different, their different outfits that come into play. I mean, speaking of outfits, I do have to ask you, going back to New Orleans and Mardi Gras. One of the things I love is when you and Colleen, your wife, post the annual Mardi Gras costume photo. I think one of my favorites was the pothole.
Yeah, That was pretty
Right?
good. If you've been
How
to New Orleans, potholes are very popular.
how far in advance do you plan this?
Oh
And who was the
gosh.
mastermind?
Well, it depends. But when I was growing up in New Orleans, we lived a block off the parade route. My mom was an author and illustrator, and
Yes.
everybody thinks of the Mardi Gras as the version on Bourbon Street, but Mardi Gras is really a festive family day of picnics and enjoying the parades, and it's very much family oriented when you get away from downtown. And that's what I grew up with. And my mom used to dress us up every year. Well, when you got to be 13 or 14, started going to Mardi Gras with your friends, that wasn't very cool. So I got away from it. But I came back to it, and I made my kids do it, and I give my mom all the credit for that. As far as the ideas, they come at different times, and they come to we get them different ways. I can't take all the credit by no means, but we really enjoy, and I especially really enjoy that day.
Oh, it's so good. Do you already have it planned for next year, what you're gonna do, or are
Oh
you
no,
still
oh no,
okay?
I had no idea.
You talk about bringing your kids along. It is great. I was actually talking to my own mom the other day, and just talking about how it when you really think about it, because we were talking about how Dwayne Lucas had passed, and I was telling her, because your father loved horse racing, you loved horse racing, and you actually got more involved, and then I loved horse racing. That's led me to my own family. What's it like for you? Haley is working for Breeders' Cup, and
So I have two girls, two
yes,
daughters. My oldest is named Ashley,
yes, Ashley.
and they've grown up with it. And when I say they've grown up with it, we're talking about a dad that's, out of town about 4 to 5 months of the year, comes back every couple of weeks for a couple of days. But that's what they grew up with, and a dad they never got to have breakfast with because he's already at work early in the morning. But I wondered how much that bothered them, but they both have said, "Hey, look, that was just the way of life. It didn't bother us at all." But uh, you know. Uh, they saw a lot of the sacrifices, and they sacrificed themselves for the career path that I took. So having them there for the Kentucky Oaks, and witnessing what is an extraordinary moment for any trainer, was kind of the this is why we did it, and we were able to get rewarded with that race.
I think they all jumped on you, right?
Well, I
Didn't
had one of my
everyone in the
close
tree?
friends push me in the back and knock me to the ground, and everybody jumped on top of me. It was a dog pile,
I love
and
it.
and then fortunately nobody got hurt. There were no injuries to report. Uh, I was too excited to feel any pain, but that was a great moment. We all watched it on TV. That's one of my things. I like to watch it on TV rather than live because I can see exactly what the rider is doing in the race. So
Yeah.
so I watched it on TV, and then I turned around, I raised my hands in the air in victory, and I got pushed from behind and hit the ground, and everybody jumped on top after that.
Oh my gosh. Well, thankfully, yeah, there was no injury. You were able to get to the winner's circle and lead her on in fine form. I do have to ask you, because in addition to being a father, husband, trainer, you're also an on-air analyst for Fox. Naira, how in the world do you manage your time?
Well, first of all, that's the one sport I know really well, horse racing. I've done it my whole life. I couldn't be a commentator for any other sport, but I know horse racing, and I know it well. And I'm able through practice, as you all know, because you do it yourself, to present my ideas in a way that the audience can understand. That's my goal, and I enjoy doing it. I've always enjoyed teaching, whether it's in the barn or not. And I feel like as an analyst, I can give you a trainer's perspective of a race as we're coming into it, even if I'm not taking part in it, like I do at Saratoga Live on the weekends, and like I do for the Belmont, which I did this past. I've done it for the last 3 years. That's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. Um, I don't. I don't get nervous. That doesn't bother me in the least. So when you're not nervous, as you well know, your mind flows freely and you can present your ideas well. And that's what I try to do on the air.
Ah, see, yeah. Well, that's the thing. You know your craft. You know it inside and out, and then it's just basically like sharing what's going in a you don't, like you said, when you know it so well, you don't have to overthink it. It comes
Yeah. So, I
naturally.
mean, I'll give you an example. This weekend, I was watching a race, and I noticed the heavy favorite. They were young horses. The heavy favorite was being handled by one of the outriders instead of the regular pony boy, and that's a negative sign. That's a horse that's not acting correctly. The pony boy cannot handle that horse in the post parade. So now the outrider's having to take over the you know the duties of getting that horse to the gate. And that horse was 4 to 5. He ran.
Oh, we lost Tom. We lost Tom. Let's see if he can come back here. I'll text him to let him know that he kind of got bumped out here. Sometimes this happens, y'all, when the other person gets a phone call or something of that nature. So let me just see here, and I'll let him know you lost connection. But what he's saying is so true. So if you have a 4 to 5 favorite and they're being so hard to handle that the regular pony boy can't do it, they need to bring in the outrider. Obviously, you might not want to place money on such a short priced horse anyway and look for better value elsewhere. But Tom is just great. I love listening to his analysis. And one of the questions I was going to ask him, and we'll see if he can get reconnected here in a minute, was regarding being there at the Belmont. That was such a great race between sovereignty and journalism. And I would just love his input as we look forward to what the rest of 2025 holds. And then he's got some horses entered this weekend that we got to chat about. And so we'll see if he can get reconnected. In the meantime, as we wait for him to pop back in, if you have any questions for Tom, go ahead, you guys. This is a live show as of 5:48 p.m. on this July 1st, kicking off the month with the Future Stars forecast. Thank you so much for being tuned in. I see that we have almost 900 people watching live right now. And as thankful as I am for your viewership, it's always, of course, better when I have my guest. We're going to see if he can pop back in here in a second. But again, if you have any questions, there he is. I got him now. Let's see here.
I'm getting low on battery.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. See,
Yeah.
This is what happens. I get asking the questions, and then we just roll.
I heard you say one of the questions you wanted to ask me, and then I lost everything. What did you want to ask me?
So you were at the Belmont. So from the putting the analyst cap on, how did you like that throwdown with sovereignty, just in journalism, and how do you feel that the rest of the year shapes up for those two?
Well, they're in a class by themselves. Journalism is almost like the unlucky Alidar against Affirmed. Although he did win the Preakness and Alidar was second in all 3 Triple Crown races, he's got a horse that's better than he is, and that horse is Sovereignty. Just an amazing racehorse. And I think these 2 young horses, speaking of the 3-year-old class, oftentimes last year included, I didn't think it was a great class, but this is a really great class of 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
And those 2 stand out, but Sovereignty's at the top all by himself.
Yeah. That closing kick, people, not to pat myself on the back, but he was my Kentucky Derby pick, just because that closing kick, usually, I mean, with closers, right, in the Kentucky Derby, it can get a little dicey. You're trying to navigate 19 other horses or however finally make that final gate. But he just, I don't know, he has a way about finding his way and just getting to it, whether the pace is hot, whether the pace is slow. It just doesn't seem to matter. And now Tom's frozen. Or I'm frozen. Somebody's frozen. I don't know. I think it might be Tom. Who's frozen, you guys? Can you hear me? Can you hear Tom? Oh, this is what's happened. This is what happens sometimes during a live stream. But that's also what makes it more, it makes it a genuine conversation. This is how we can, bring you guys into that conversation, is when it's live, obviously. And so this is just one of those things. You got to roll with it when it happens. And hopefully we can get Tom back. And mainly because I'm going to wrap this show up when he does come back, just to ask him what he has planned tentatively, because that's all you can do in racing, right? It's a day-to-day thing, with Dazzle D'Oro off that amazing debut win. That was sensational. So we'll see if we can get him back one more time. And at that point, obviously, I'll try to get things tight so we can wrap up. So if you do have a question out there, I highly suggest you get it up now so we can get it worked in before we got to say bye-bye, right? But going back to what he was saying, sovereignty is just so cool. I'm really looking forward to what that horse does next. Just a really, really potent closing kick with him. And what was really interesting in the Belmont is that we saw him closer to the pace than I think anybody anticipated, right? So it also shows that he's dynamic, and he's just got a lot of grit to him. I look forward to when the time comes for him to take on older. But in the meantime, of course, we have some other really important 3-year-old races coming up. And something I'm looking forward to, the Saratoga meet, Easton Union, got to be sporting my old Smoke t-shirt here. They have great apparel if you haven't checked them out already. Tom actually possibly has run out of battery. That was part of the reason that the phone was cutting out. I'll wait and see if we can get him back again. And if we can't, again, it's just live, guys. Anybody out there want to ask a question? Go for it. Anything about this past weekend of racing? If anybody has anything they want to share, if you have a favorite horse that's currently in training that you want to, share your enthusiasm for, or if there's a 2-year-old out there that you've heard about that I should know about, you can go ahead and comment. And we'll see if I can learn more about them myself. Anybody? It's so funny too, because there's over 900 people currently watching live right now. Y'all are shy. I don't bite. So if you got a question or if you got a comment, you can pop it up right there and I'll acknowledge you. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna, the funny thing is that I don't even think I could text Tom to find out if he can pop back in, because I think his phone died. I think that is what has happened here. But I'll wait one more minute and we'll see. If he can't, he can't, y'all. And I'm sorry. But I do believe that the question I was going to ask has been kind of answered before. Let me just verify before I say so, because I don't want to misquote him. So give me just a minute here while I look it up. And let's see here. So Dazzle D'Oro is, again, earned the Rising Star designation from the TDN. That is the Thoroughbred Daily News. You can, of course, go ahead, Google them. If you don't know the URL off the top of your head, although I'll tell it to you right now, it's the thoroughbreddailynews.com. But yeah, you can go to Rising Stars and you will find Dazzle D'Oro. And let's see here. What does he want to do? I'm almost sure I saw. Okay, so it says, Tom Amoss continued, "We are excited for his future and we plan on taking him to Saratoga for the summer. The Saratoga Special would be under consideration." So I think that's pretty cool, y'all, right? The Saratoga Special. I believe that's on Whitney Day. And part of the reason why that is cool is because that means I would be able to be there in person to see the race, because I'm planning to go to Saratoga that weekend. Let's see here. Whitney Day, of course, is August 2nd. It's a great day of racing. And then, of course, you have the Fasig-Tipton sale, the big sale of the yearlings of the select ones, and that's always a fun time as well. And you get to see, hopefully, some of the rising stars of the sport a couple years down the road. In fact, it was cool. One of the years I went to the Saratoga sale is when Flightline went through the ring. So that was a fun look back. We did a little live broadcast, a little live stream for the forecast from the ring there. No idea what that horse was going to eventually become, but it's cool to say that we knew him when, right? That's part of it. You never know. You never know in this industry who, somebody or a horse you might feature, a new face you might interview, turns out to be that next superstar. So I think Tom is just not having the technological luck, and that's okay. He had a big weekend with this horse. That was, again, just a stellar performance, and I'm looking forward to more in terms of what Dazzle Doro does. I want to thank Tom for his time, and again, I want to say another shout out to Haley Amos, Director of Social and Content at the Breeders' Cup, for putting out that amazing montage featuring D. Wayne Lucas in all 20 of his Breeders' Cup victories. No trainer has won more. Aidan O'Brien is currently tied, but 20. Can you believe it? There's never going to be another one like D. Wayne Lucas, but that's okay, because we're all unique and special in our own ways. And it's just really cool that, he's somebody that could recognize that in people and in horses and bring out the best in them. So hopefully you'll bring out the best in whoever's around you. And you can check us back here next week for the Future Star forecast. In the meantime, Errol, I'll put this up for you right now. Yeah, our condolences to the coach. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you know what? I should do something also, just to let you guys know before I leave what's coming up for the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series. These are our winning your ins. These are actually the horses who have recently won. I'm going to go ahead and pop that up for you. So, Touch of Destiny. I'm not going to even attempt to say the name of the race, but got the win in your in here on Sunday for the Dirt Mile. Of course, we saw Mind Frame. What a performance from him in the Stephen Foster Stakes. Got to give a shout out, of course, to Sierra Leone as well, who was just closing quick there in the final strides. Of course, that's a winning your in for the Longines Classic. Torpedo Anna. She proved the doubters wrong. She just, for whatever reason, didn't get it done there in the La Troyenne, but boy, she came back in the Fasig-Tipton Fleur-de-Lis Stakes, so winning you're in for the Longines Distaff. And then we have some other international action that took place at the Hippodrome de Gavia. And these are winning your ins for the Longines Turf, the Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf. And then that takes us back all the way to Royal Ascot, as you saw Charles Darwin winning the Norfolk Stakes. Now, what's coming up, I will show you that. Just waiting for this to pop up. And there we go. Remember, you can check this all out on the breeders.com website. Just go under, to races, and it'll talk about the challenge series. So let's go to the schedule. And what we got next is terms of the win and your ins. The Haskell Stakes for the Longines Classic. You'll be able to check that out on NBC and FanDuel TV. Of course, that's going to be at Monmouth Park. The Bing Crosby, a winning you're in for the Side Game Sprint at Del Mar. The King George, the 6th and Queen Elizabeth Stakes, Longines Turf. That's going to be at Ascot. The Cutter Sussex Stakes at Goodwood, a winning you're in for the FanDuel Mile. That's July 30th. Also on the 30th at Goodwood is the Jaeger Le Couture Molcombe Stakes. That is a win and you're in for the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And then also at Goodwood on the 31st, a win and you're in for the Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf, talking about the Cutter Nassau Stakes. So lots of action coming your way. Again, if you missed any of that or you want to look at it more in depth, just go to breederscup.com. And as you can see, the countdown is on. Breeders' Cup going to be at Del Mar, October 31st and November 1st. So That was your Future Stars forecast. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, I will see you next week.